I work late shifts at a large hospital on the outskirts of the city. The parking lot is enormous and mostly deserted at night, except for a handful of night staff cars. On one evening in late October, I finished my shift around 2 in the morning. I remember walking past the darkened wings of the hospital, feeling the familiar chill that comes when the air turns colder than usual. My steps echoed against the concrete as I approached the car park. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the sound of engines. Several cars were running, their lights dim in the shadowed rows. That alone seemed strange because the lot was supposed to be almost empty at that hour. I counted the vehicles in the dim lighting. There were at least 6 cars idling, all doors closed, no one inside. I scanned the lot carefully, thinking maybe the drivers had stepped away for a smoke or a break. But the silence around me was absolute. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums until it hurts. I hesitated near my own car, heart starting to race. My instincts told me not to touch anything, yet part of me was drawn to see who might be inside. As I got closer, I noticed something more unsettling. Each car had its hazard lights on, blinking slowly and rhythmically. Even stranger, all the cars were facing the same direction, as if waiting for something or someone. I pulled my phone from my pocket to call security, but hesitated. My fingers froze on the screen. Nothing felt normal. The shadows between the rows seemed too heavy, too still, as if they weren't just the absence of light. And then I heard it, a whisper, soft and almost impossible to pinpoint. I spun around, searching, but the lot was empty. The whisper sounded like my name, but I could not be sure. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alone in a place that usually felt safe. I decided to get into my car, doors locking automatically as I slid in. The engines around me were louder now, rumbling like beasts waiting for something. I glanced at the rearview mirror and froze. In the distance, at the far edge of the lot, I thought I saw movement. Not a person, just a dark figure gliding between the cars. My breathing quickened. I started the engine and drove forward slowly, trying to reach the exit, but the lot seemed longer than it should. Rows of cars stretched further than I remembered, and every time I thought I was close, the figure seemed to appear again in another row. I reached the first exit and nearly laughed from relief, only for the engines to rev louder all around me, synchronized like a chorus of warning. My mind screamed to leave, but before I could move, the lights in the cars flickered. Each one blinked off and then back on in perfect rhythm, and the whisper returned, louder, clearer, unmistakably my name. I floored the accelerator. Something had crossed in front of my car, too fast to see. I barely stopped in time, heart hammering, unsure whether I had nearly hit something or if something had hit me. The next night, I returned to the lot, unable to shake the memory. I told myself it had been exhaustion or imagination, yet a part of me knew better. My shift ended earlier this time, around midnight, and I took the same route to the car park. The empty rows greeted me with a calm that almost felt deceptive. I walked toward my car, noting the absence of running engines and hazard lights. Relief washed over me. I opened the door and settled in, keys in hand, but before I could start the engine, a cold wind swept through the lot. The temperature had dropped suddenly, sharp and biting. Then I heard the engine start. One, then another, until the whole lot was alive with mechanical growls, echoing through the concrete like a distant thunderstorm. I froze, heart thudding. No one was visible anywhere. The shadows seemed to stretch taller, reaching out toward the cars. I watched a sedan near the center row, its interior dimly illuminated by the dashboard lights. Then the driver's seat moved. Slowly, the backrest leaned forward slightly, as if someone invisible had shifted. I rubbed my eyes, convinced I was hallucinating. When I looked again, the seat was upright, motionless, but the hazard lights were blinking in a pattern that made no sense, a rhythm that felt like a pulse, almost alive. I grabbed my phone to record it, telling myself that proof would calm me. The moment I hit record, all engines stopped simultaneously. The silence returned, heavier this time, pressing down in a way that made it difficult to breathe. I looked around frantically. In the rearview mirror, I saw something move outside my peripheral vision. A figure, dark and blurry, gliding between the cars. It was tall, too tall, its proportions wrong. Its head turned slowly toward me, not with curiosity, but with an intent that made my stomach twist. I didn't drive away immediately. I wanted to see what it wanted, what it was, but the figure stopped at the far row and raised an arm, impossibly long and thin. I felt a magnetic pull in my chest, like it was reaching for me without moving closer. The hair on my arm stood on end, and I knew without thinking that leaving was impossible unless I played by its rules. The lot felt like it had grown in size, cars multiplying around me, shadows thickening like smoke. I started the engine cautiously. The moment the car hummed, all engines roared back to life. Hazard lights flashed wildly. I couldn't see the figure now, but I felt its presence pressing against the glass, against my back, against my mind. The car in front of me, which had been empty, now contained a silhouette, almost human, but its eyes were impossibly black. I slammed my foot on the accelerator and sped toward the exit. I could feel it behind me, something gliding silently, keeping pace with me, faster than physics should allow. When I finally reached the edge of the lot and turned onto the road, all cars were suddenly dead. Engines silent, hazard lights off. My hand shook so violently I could barely grip the wheel. I kept driving, not stopping until I was far away, try to convince myself that I had imagined the whole thing. But that night, every time I closed my eyes, I could hear the engines running and the whisper calling my name louder than before. I started avoiding the lot, taking longer routes home. But one night, exhausted and running late, I had no choice. It was after 3 in the morning. The hospital's night shift had kept me late with an emergency, and I was too drained to care. The first thing I noticed when I arrived was the smell, a metallic, burnt smell like an engine oil fire. The lot was empty, cars dark and cold, but the odor made my stomach turn. I got into my car, locking the doors instinctively. As I turned the key, I heard a faint, almost imperceptible revving from somewhere in the distance. I froze, trying to locate it. The revving grew louder until it became a chorus, low and synchronized, almost chanting. The headlights of the cars around me flickered briefly. Each blink revealed movement inside seats that should have been empty. Shadows twisting unnaturally, as if the seats themselves were alive. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. There were no notifications, just a video message from an unknown number. Hesitating, I pressed play. The video showed my car from inside the lot. The camera was positioned so I could see myself sitting in it, as if it had been recording all along. Then I noticed movement behind me in the video, something approaching slowly, gliding without sound. The shape was wrong, too tall, limbs stretching beyond what was human. I dropped the phone. It landed face up, screen broken, but when I looked, the video was still playing. The figure from a lot was now inside my car, standing behind the seat, taller than the roof, its black eyes locked on me. I turned, and the back window showed nothing. The figure had vanished. I could feel a heat radiating from the back seat, a pressure that made my chest tighten. I started the engine and tried to leave, but the exit seemed further than I remembered. I passed rows and rows of cars, all with engines running, all hazard lights flashing. Some of them were missing doors, hoods, wheels, yet the lights and engines worked. A car beside me suddenly lurched forward without a driver. I swerved, heart hammering. Something banged on the roof, a slow, heavy thump like knuckles drumming in rhythm. I could not escape, and then the whisper came again, clear, insistent, close to my ear. My name. I could feel its breath on my neck, though nothing was there. I floored the accelerator. The rows of cars stretched endlessly, the lot expanding as if mocking my escape. I realized then that the lot was not just a place, it was a trap, a living entity feeding on fear, feeding on attention. And it knew my name. After that night, I could barely sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the lot stretching endlessly, hazard lights blinking, engines growling in unison. I began driving a different route home, taking back streets and avoiding the hospital's lot entirely. But a week later, I was called in for an emergency at the hospital again. Exhausted and terrified, I had no choice but to face it. When I arrived, the night was eerily quiet. The hospital lights seemed dimmer, colder than usual. As I walked to my car, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, that the figures, the engines, and the whispers were stress, lack of sleep, imagination. My hand shook as I reached the door. Inside, my car was exactly as I had left it. Nothing moved, no engines running. I exhaled in relief and started the engine. The instant the car hummed to life, engines roared around me, hazard lights flickering violently. Panic seized me. My hands tightened on the wheel as I turned to leave, but the lot had changed. The rows of cars stretched infinitely, impossible angles forming between them, concrete fading into shadows. And then I noticed them, faces appearing behind windows, pressed to the glass. Not human faces, but faces stretched, twisted, mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide and unblinking. I drove forward cautiously, every instinct screaming to flee, but each turn led me deeper into the lot. The whisper started again, louder than ever. I could feel the words not just in my ears, but vibrating in my skull. My name, and then more names. I didn't recognize them, but I realized they were staff from the hospital, people who had never been assigned night shifts. Their voices merged into a chorus, whispering, calling, begging, mocking. I glanced at the rearview mirror and froze. A figure was in the back seat, taller than the car, limbs bent at unnatural angles. It leaned forward, black eyes locked on me. I could feel a pressure in my chest, like it was pressing inside my body, making it impossible to breathe normally. I swerved, tried to shake it, but the car refused to respond as it should. Tires screeched, but the car moved slower than I commanded, as if time itself had thickened. Then I saw a car pull alongside me. Empty, no driver. Hazard lights flashing in a manic rhythm. The engine growled like a beast, and the front wheels rose slightly off the ground, as if the car was moving without touching the pavement. I realized then that every vehicle in the lot was alive, aware, hunting. The figure in my back seat leaned closer, its arms stretching impossibly, brushing my shoulder. A shock ran through me, pain and cold, and I screamed. I didn't remember leaving the lot. One moment I was surrounded. The next, I was on the main road outside the hospital. Engines were gone, cars silent, lot normal. My pulse raced uncontrollably. I looked back. Everything appeared untouched. It was like nothing had happened. But my clothes were damp with sweat, my hands still trembling, my body sore, as if I had been struggling with a weight far heavier than myself. I swore I would never go back, but I could feel it in my bones that the lot had marked me, claimed me somehow. Weeks passed, but the memory and the whispers would not leave. Every night, I dreamed of the lot, endless rows of running engines, hazard lights flashing in hypnotic patterns. The whispers became voices in my dreams, calling me, taunting me, echoing through corridors of asphalt that stretched infinitely. I tried therapy, medication, logic, even moving to another part of the city. Nothing worked. Every night, I woke to the same chilling hum inside my head, the same metallic burnt smell. One night, I received a text from an unknown number. No words, just a location pin. I recognized it immediately. The hospital's night shift car park. I stared at the screen, heart hammering, but I was drawn to it. Against every rational thought, I went. I drove there slowly, trembling, trying to prepare myself. The lot was empty. The silence was oppressive. I parked, keys in hand, and nothing happened. Relief flooded me. Perhaps I was imagining it. Perhaps I was free. Then I heard it. A low rumble from the far rows. Engines starting, one by one, until the whole lot vibrated with life. I froze. The rows stretched impossibly, concrete distorting, shadowed shapes moving inside the cars, faces pressed against glass, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. And then I realized the whispers were not coming from the lot. They were inside me, my own thoughts, my own memory, repeating names. I could feel hundreds of them, the dead or trapped or gone, all calling. A figure emerged from the shadows, impossibly tall, limbs bending unnaturally, black eyes gleaming. It approached the driver's side of my car, and I could see it was smiling, though its mouth was too wide, too human and inhuman at once. The air turned thick, almost liquid, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I tried to start the engine. Nothing. My hand shook violently. The figure raised its arm and touched the roof of the car. I could feel its cold, unnatural weight. Then I heard another engine start, inside my car from nowhere. The back seat distorted, stretching impossibly. Shadows filled the interior. My own voice echoed from somewhere inside the vehicle, screaming, calling my name, begging for escape. I tried to open the door. It wouldn't budge. Hazard lights flashed in a pattern that seemed to pulse directly with my heartbeat. Outside, the lot had multiplied. Cars I had never seen appeared in infinite rows. Some were warped, twisted, melting into shadows. Others had faces pressed against windows, some familiar, some not. All silent, all watching. I realized then that I was not meant to leave. The lot was a living trap, and I had been marked the moment I first saw the engines running. The whispers became louder, voices merging into one deafening scream. I felt myself pulled from the seat, my body stretching, twisting unnaturally, merging with shadows, becoming part of the lot itself. My mind screamed in horror, every thought, every memory, every fear amplified. I felt my name being erased, my identity consumed, replaced by the ceaseless hum of engines and flashing lights. Now I exist inside the lot. I am one of the whispers, calling to anyone who comes too close. I can feel them as I call, the same fear and confusion I once had. The lot grows larger every day, engines running, hazard lights flashing, shadows moving inside empty seats. And sometimes I see someone like I once was standing at the entrance, heart racing, eyes wide with disbelief. I reach out, whispering their name, drawing them in, waiting for the engines to start. If you ever drive past a dark car park late at night and hear engines running, stay away. Count the cars, but do not step inside. The lot is always hungry, and once it marks you, it never lets go. I am proof of that. I am proof of the whisper, the endless engines, and the empty car park that waits for the living to become shadows.